Canadians are finally realizing that our public safety minister was lying and that Bill C-22 is all about spying on the regular, hardworking Canadians. And it's about time people start waking up. Welcome to the Political Orphans. My name is Nico Lagan. Tonight, we are not doing a deep dive on Bill C-22 because we've done this already and I've been talking about this bill for over a month now. But a lot of things seems to be happening right now, so it is time for me to give you an update. But before we do that, let's do a quick recap. Bill C-22, an act respecting lawful access, was tabled on March 12, 2026. It is now in second reading, which means it is in front of the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security. But as you know, the House committees have become a formality now that the Liberals gained their majority through floor crossing and reorganized the House committees, going from 4 Liberals, 4 Conservatives, and 1 Bloc to 7 Liberals, 4 Conservatives, and 1 Bloc, making sure that they can pass whatever legislation they want. And the last updates that we have on the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security for Bill C-22 dates from May 7th, which we will address in a minute. If you remember, and this is what people are finally outraged by, is the main problem of Bill C-22, which is that the government is requiring electronic service providers to save your metadata for up to 1 year, and that without a warrant, just in case they need your information. We're talking about internet and telecommunication service providers like Bell, Rogers, Telus, Starlink, Videotron, electronic device manufacturers like Apple, Samsung, Google, Sony, and any other company that their device have access to the internet, cloud service providers like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, all social media platforms, messaging app like WhatsApp, Messenger, Signal, Telegram, e-commerce website, and the list goes on and on and on, meaning that the government wants to force electronic service providers to spy on you, copying all of your information and sending it through their network. So whatever you send through their network, they want a copy of it. They want to make sure that ESPs are saving it and making it available to the government when they need it. So, to do that, the government would force ESPs to weaken their encryption, making their services less secure in order to provide them what we call a backdoor. That's the update. This is what we're at right now. But this is a recap, my apologies, the updates. And this is what has been developing over the past week or so. And that's why people are finally starting to talk about it on social media, and even mainstream media is talking about this now. But obviously, civil liberties and advocacy group are pushing back, demanding that the bill be withdrawn. As a matter of fact, John Carpay, president of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom, is going to join us tomorrow to speak about how they are fighting Bill C-22. But here's where things get interesting. Big tech companies are pushing back. There is a bunch of them that have come out publicly, which is pretty rare because normally they don't really come out. They'll talk about it. They'll try to deal with the government directly, but they will not come out publicly to speak against legislation. But in this case, they are. So if we start by a company that everybody knows, Apple. Apple is calling for Bill C-22 to be changed. In a statement, the company warned that at a time of rising and pervasive threats from malicious actors seeking access to user information, Bill C-22 as drafted would undermine our ability to offer the powerful privacy and security features users expect from Apple. The legislation could allow the Canadian government to force companies to break encryption by inserting backdoors into their products, something Apple will never do. I don't know if you remember this, but last year, Apple mounted a legal challenge to a demand from the British government to access encrypted consumer data. Britain had targeted Apple's Advanced Data Protection Service, which encrypts personal data uploaded and stored remotely on the company's cloud servers. The British government asked Apple to create the ability to access the content via a backdoor. In response, Apple removed the ADP tool, its strongest data protection product, from Britain, saying that it had never built a backdoor or master key to any of its product and services and never will. So basically, they said no to the legislation from the UK, which is very similar to what our government is trying to pass right here. Another company that came out to talk against Bill C-22 is Meta, the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. They had this to say the day after they appeared in front of the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security on May 7th. Part 2 of Bill 22 could have a significant negative impact on Canadians' privacy and cybersecurity, including potentially requiring companies to build or maintain capabilities that break or weaken encryption and forcing providers to install government spyware directly on their system. Meta urges the government to amend the bill to remove obligations for companies to add third-party surveillance tools to their systems, to strengthen the definition of systemic vulnerability, to explicitly rule out any requirement that would weaken encryption or introduce security weakness, and to codify the process for companies to challenge problematic requests. This is basically the exact same thing that Apple was just saying, but there's a keyword here that Meta uses, and they're the only one to use it, is spyware. So they're calling it what it is. The government is trying to spy on Canadians through their devices, through their social media platforms. But they're not the only one. There are multiple other companies. I don't know if you heard about Signal. I don't know if you guys use the messaging app Signal, but they are recognized for their encryption. They're recognized to be secure and basically unbreakable. If I'm not mistaken, our own government, our MPs uses Signal in order to send each other messages because it is so well encrypted. But it turns out that they're saying that they would rather pull out of the country than be compelled to compromise on the privacy promises we have made to our users. Bill C-22 potentially allows hackers to exploit these very vulnerabilities engineered into electronic systems, with private messaging services serving as an ideal target for foreign adversaries, he added in a text message. They're all talking about the same thing. They're all talking about how the government is trying to build a backdoor into their service in order to spy on you, to see what you're doing. There's another one that you need to hear from, I believe that it was Signal. Was it Signal that was saying? No, it wasn't Signal. It's another company. I think it's the next one I wanted to talk about, which is Windscribe. I don't know if you guys use VPNs at all, but it is one of them. Actually, hold on. Is it Signal? I think I have it right here. Yeah, I believe it's the article right here. This is, I was kind of very surprised that they said this right here. This is also Signal. We pay an ungodly amount of taxes to this corrupt government, and in return, they want to destroy the entire essence of our service to basically spy on its citizen. Not happening. We'll move HQ and take our taxes elsewhere. They're being very honest because it is a Canadian company that is their headquarters is in Canada. But I love what they say. We pay an ungodly amount of taxes to this corrupt government. And in return, they want to destroy the entire essence of our service to basically spy on its own citizens. Not happening. We'll move HQ and take our taxes elsewhere. This has to be the ballsiest message sent by a company, any company that I've seen. There's also a company by the name of NordVPN. I don't know if you know Nord whatsoever, but they are a company that does VPNs. They also mentioned that they will. NordVPN has said in a social media post it is reviewing the bill and would consider leaving Canada if the bill requires to compromise its privacy protection. To prevent this, we will consider all viable options, including limiting or, if necessary, removing our presence from Canadian jurisdiction, NordVPN said in the next post. And I want to bring up something because I do realize that I made a massive mistake and I need to correct it. It is not, is it Signal? Man, no, it is not Signal. That's what I thought. Signal did not say about we pay an ungodly amount because that's what is weird. They're not Canadian. It's Windscribe that joins Signal in threatening Canada exit over controversial surveillance bill. So Windscribe, if you use VPNs, they're one of the biggest ones. They're Canadian companies. So it wasn't Signal. Signal's not a Canadian company. It is Windscribe that is a Canadian company that is threatening to relocate their headquarters out of Canada if the country's controversial new surveillance legislation, known as Bill 22, passes into law. If enacted, Bill C-22 would mandate electronic service providers to build technical surveillance capacities and retain certain user metadata for up to a year. For anyone using a VPN to protect their online identity, this legislation contradicts the strict no-log policies that keeps user data out of the hands of governments and hackers alike. And they are the one that said that we pay an ungodly amount of taxes to this corrupt government, and in return, they want to destroy the entire essence of our service to basically spy on its own citizens. Not happening. We'll move HQ and take our taxes elsewhere. So I got to say, Windscribe, I don't use them, but I would. I absolutely love what they're saying, and they're being honest because they are talking about strict no logs, meaning they don't save what users are doing through their VPNs. They don't want to save it because it goes against the nature of their service, and they want to keep user data out of the hands of governments and hacker alike. I like how they say governments and hackers alike right next to each other, like they're both the same, which clearly they want the same access. They want the access to the same information. But I absolutely love what this company stands for. It's a shame that a company, if a company like that ends up leaving Canada because of Bill C-22, but I would understand why. At least they're being extremely, extremely upfront with what's happening. And I found it surprising that those companies were actually mentioning words like Meta mentioned spyware, Windscribe, my apologies, is mentioning that they have a strict no log policy, which is a technical term. I love it. And they want to keep user data out of the hands of governments and hackers, and that they pay ungodly amount of taxes. And now our government wants to destroy their business. I absolutely love that they have the balls to say this as a Canadian company. You got to respect that. You absolutely have to respect what they're doing. And the next question you should be asking yourself is, as much as these companies are talking against the government, they're talking against Bill C-22. What about the biggest ones on the market, the Samsung, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, social media platforms like X, messaging platforms like Telegram? Nothing, absolutely nothing. I was looking for public comments, nothing. They haven't said anything. But one thing that seems to be very common with those companies is they tend to do things behind closed doors. They will approach governments, they will lobby governments to change those bills, but they don't do it publicly because historically, all of those companies have opposed similar bills, so-called lawful access frameworks in the past. So not surprised if they're working on it. But the point of the matter is that big tech companies are pushing back. But what does that mean for you? What does that mean for me? What does that mean for Canadians? Well, here's the truth. Although big companies, big tech companies are fighting back, I wouldn't celebrate. Because as much as Apple says that it will not build a backdoor to their systems, in the US, they do comply with a massive volume of device and account requests, which seeks deep users' personal information and content data. They do the same thing in the UK. So basically, if the government requests certain private information, they do give it to them. They just don't give them access or backdoors to their system. So the fact that they're saying that they will not give backdoor access doesn't mean that they won't share your personal data. It just means they won't give the government direct access to them, and that the government will probably have to ask for the data. Not probably, they will have to ask. Meta, another thing to consider, because although Meta had some strong words about Bill C-22 when they went in the House committee on May 7th, the day after, May 8th, they removed the end-to-end encryption for Instagram direct messages, meaning that all your DMs on Instagram are no longer fully private. The platform can technically scan all of your conversations. So again, are we looking at something like Apple if they remove the encryption? Because technically, if a company like, let's say, Signal has a very, very strong encryption and end-to-end encryption, meaning that even them are not able to see what you're sending. But in this case, if you remove the end-to-end encryption, obviously they would have access to it. Your messages are still protected somewhat from the outside world, but the platform itself can see your messages. And that's what we're talking about Instagram. That's what we're talking about. Apple obviously has access to your information. It just doesn't share it. Well, it doesn't share it. Like I said, it does share it with governments in the US and the UK. It just won't give them access to it. But the question becomes, what's the solution? Or what are the solutions here? Because it's a very good question, considering that spying technologies are all around us. So even if you got rid of your smartphone, your computer, your smart TV, your smart everything, even if you got rid of your internet, Big Brother would still be able to track you. And that's why on Thursday, I want to do a deep dive on Palantir and their new Canadian partner called Cohere. So Thursday, we're going to talk about this because Palantir is a massive player in the US, and it looks like they partnered up with a company called Cohere to operate in Canada. So we will be talking about this on Thursday. But the point of the matter is that you can get rid of all your internet related devices. As soon as you get out of your house, you're still going to be spied on. Everything is spying on you today. So what's the solution? And I don't claim to have a solution for that one, because that is a massive question, since we're so integrated with the technology that spies on us. But is the next step for Canadian, and that's a question I have for you guys, is the next step for Canadians to do what they did in the UK over the weekend? I don't know if you guys have been following, but they had another Unite the Kingdom protest over the weekend. If you haven't seen it, here is an aerial shot, a drone shot of the protest. There's no sound. That's normal. That's what happens with drones. They don't normally have microphones on them. But look at that. Look how deep that goes. I've seen other shots where it continues and continues and continues at the top there. So that happened over the weekend. But I think my favorite thing that happened over the weekend is this right here. Keir Starmer, the UK PM, was forced to flee because a mob was screaming at him, following him. Look at this. So, is that what Canada needs? Because as I said, I don't have the answer for you guys. I don't know what the next step will be when it comes to surveillance. We can block the bills. We can do everything that we can in order to prevent a bill like Bill C-22 to pass, Bill C-8 to pass, the new Online Harms Act, the new Bill C-63. But there's a lot of technology that's already in place, that's already spying on us all the time. So what can we do? And that's a question I have for you guys. I want to know what you guys think. What do you think is the solution? Tomorrow, we are joined, like I said earlier, I just want to make sure you heard me. We are joined by the president of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, John Carpe, to speak about what they're doing to fight Bill C-22. So join us 7 p.m. tomorrow. On Thursday, I'm doing a deep dive on Palantir and Cohere. So basically, what is in the works right now in Canada when it comes to AI spies all around you. But for right now, we're going to hit the comment section. I want to see what you guys think about this. I'm going to open the hotline. I forgot to take my case off of my device to take your calls, so I just removed it. I'm going to put the link right now in the comment section. So if you guys want to call in, if you want to have a voice-to-voice conversation, the Orphans hotline is live. It's open. So go to callme.road.com and enter the code SFLXJY. I just dumped it in the comment section if you want to have your voice heard. Before we get your questions and your comments, a reminder that this show is 100% listener funded. There's no corporate, government, or political money, just you. So if you believe in educating your fellow Canadians and having these hard conversations like the one we're having today, consider donating. You can do it right now on YouTube, but if you want to make sure that we keep 100% of your donation instead of giving 30% of it to YouTube, go to thepoliticalorphans.com/donate. show, and let's build the real news alternative Canadians deserve. I will drop the link in the comment section. Oh, here we go. Now, let's see what you guys have to say about all of this. Let's check out the comment section. Doop, 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 doop. It's just loading. There we go. Now, let's see what you guys have to say. Trevor is saying, I think our bigger problems are the fact American military no longer has our back. Yeah, that is a massive problem. You're absolutely right about that. That is a massive, massive problem. Because at the end of the day, we don't really have a military to defend us. And we've allowed, what is it, 20%? Last time my last calculations, out of all the new recruits that we had in 2025, 2026, 20% of them are not even Canadians. They were not born here. They're not citizens. They're actually doing that in order to fast track their citizenship. This is the reality. So yes, you're absolutely right. The fact that we don't have Big Brother, and when I say Big Brother, I'm not talking about the state spying on us. I'm talking about our Big Brother, the Americans defending us, is going to be a problem. Is going to be a massive problem, and I agree with you. Derek Seitler is saying, may have to get Elon's service to bypass government overreach. Yeah, that, you know, like I said earlier, that's one of the reasons why I mentioned X earlier, because as far as I know, I did not see any comments from Elon Musk on Bill C-22. So I know that he's spoken against governments getting access to his information, getting access to X information. I know he's absolutely against it and will fight the government in court to prevent it. No doubt about it. He's done it. But he's been silent on Bill C-22. So we have to see what happens, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Like I said earlier, Apple has given user data and gives user data to the government all the time in both the States and the UK. We know what Facebook and Meta does. That's not surprising. They have, during the COVID, they did participate with banning people, shadow banning people. I know I lost one of my accounts on Facebook. Not one of my accounts. I lost my account on Facebook during COVID because I dared speaking against the vaccine. So we know that they work with the government. They just don't want to give the master key. They don't want to give a backdoor to the government, but they will give them our information. So yeah, Wilf is saying, damn right, they're being honest. Good on them telling the corrupt Mark's carnage. Yeah, they were pretty upfront calling it spyware. What was it? Spyware, calling it, saying that they will not build backdoors to give access to personal information, our personal information, to the government and the hackers. And that's the truth. Just like what was it? Windscribe that called the taxes they pay ungodly. So yeah, they are very honest. I do wonder though, is Canada that big of a market for them? Does it change that much for them to just step away? Because a company like Signal, if they step away from it, is it that big of a deal? I know for Windscribe is going to be a problem because their HQ is right here in Canada. So obviously it's an absolute nightmare to move your whole company to a different country. Is it that big of a deal to them? I don't know. But the point in the matter is that when you start seeing companies pushing back against the government and saying this, they will not do this, it shows you that there's a massive problem. The problem is a lot worse than what those companies are saying. Because for them to keep our, because if you notice, they don't really talk against the metadata. They just talk against the government having backdoors into their technology. They're not saying that they won't give that information. Some of them are. Don't get me wrong. Windscribe is directly saying this, and so was Signal. But in comparison to Apple and Meta, those companies are extremely small. But Meta and Samsung and Google and Apple are not saying they will not give that information. So this is the real problem that's not being really addressed, is that yes, there's a problem with weakening encryption and allowing the government backdooring into their technology, but that's not the real issue. The real issue is that our government wants to have access to our metadata, and it want those companies to save it for up to 1 year and to provide it to the government without an actual warrant. Because if you read Bill C-22, there's no need for a warrant in there. They want the information to be available. Now, to access the information, they say that they will have court orders. But the fact is that that information should not be saved without a court order. There's a lawyer, I don't remember who he was, but was using the example of a phone tap. If you're old enough to remember phone taps, they don't tap the phone of everybody in Canada. The court order is to tap the phone of one person. You need to have the court order before you start tapping the phone. You don't tap every single phone in Canada, have that information available if you need it. The phone tap started after the court order gave you approval to start tapping that phone. And that's the problem. Our government wants a copy of all the data that transitions through those electronic service providers' network in case they need it. This is the real issue with Bill C-22, and those companies are not addressing that really. They're just saying they don't want to give access to the government, but nowhere does it say outside of certain companies, like I said, the Signals and the Windscribe are saying they will not give access to that data, but we know Apple will, and we know that Meta will. Yeah. Trevor referring to his US Army comment earlier, just easier for them to pull out than stay and just adjust their policies for us. Oh, not military, my apologies. You're talking about the actual companies. And yeah, that's my point. Is Canada big enough of a market for them to have to change their policies, to change the way they do business in order to still operate here? Obviously, if it was in the United States, you see TikTok, for example, being a great example. TikTok, Trump said that he would ban TikTok because it basically belongs to the Chinese government. And if they did not change ownership to a company in the US, they wouldn't allow TikTok, they would ban it. That's a different story. Obviously, TikTok needs to have access to one, if not the biggest market in the planet. So obviously, they're going to do what needs to get done in order to keep there. But would they do that for Canada? For 40 million people? I don't think so. So yeah, I agree with you, Trevor. It's probably easier for them to pull out than do what the government wants them to do. Like everything else, it will get done in backroom deals, if anything. Yeah, it always does, doesn't it? It's always the way that it happens. Yeah, see, Trevor, you're basically proving my point here. That's basically what I was saying. Big tech doesn't care about 40 million people versus 350 million. It's a no-brainer. And that's the whole point. But it does go it does go to show that these policies are absolutely terrible. When private companies would rather pull their money, pull their investments, and go somewhere else, or just kiss goodbye an actual market because those policies are so bad for them, that tells you a lot. And like I said, it's a lot worse. They're only thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about protecting you and I. That's not what they're complaining about. They're protecting their product. So imagine how bad it actually is. Hongaloid is saying, ruled by morons, the phone zombies will drool on command. You know, this is a mistake to underestimate the people that are in power. They're not morons. The morons are us. They're not the morons. They are very smart. Like a guy like Mark Carney, don't underestimate Mark Carney. Mark Carney is not Justin Trudeau. Mark Carney is a very smart guy. He is evil, absolutely evil, cannot be trusted. He is here to continue to finish what Trudeau started and turn Canada into a communist country. And he wants to get every single natural resources under government power. That's basically what he's doing while aligning with Europe and China. That's basically what Carney's doing. He's a Marxist. If you read his book Values, you will understand that he is using the green agenda and to push his Marxist agenda. Plain and simple. But don't underestimate him thinking he's an idiot, because he's not. He's not Justin Trudeau. He definitely is not Justin Trudeau. He's doing more in 1 year that Justin Trudeau did in 10. This is how fast Carney is moving right now. And somehow people are still clapping for this. But so I agree with the second part of your comment that the phone zombies will drool on command. Yes, 100%. The Canadians out there that still believe in Carney, that believes he's doing the best for Canada, that Trump is the problem, they will probably buy this at face value and drool on command. Yeah, you're probably right. That's what they tend to do. That's why, as much as having conversation and educating people should be your number one goal, to wake people up, there are people that you just can't wake up, and there's no point trying. If there's one thing I learned of years of content creation, is pick and choose who you get in arguments or debates with, because a lot of them are not worth your time. And I always try to remember that if you argue with an idiot, you will probably lose, because they're better at being an idiot than you are, and they will drag you down to their level. So the smartest thing to do is to recognize who you're dealing with and abort the conversation. Trevor Benson is saying something that I say all the time, and I agree, man. We only have the illusion of choice. The sooner we figure that out, the sooner we can move forward. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because what are the Conservatives doing about Bill C-22? All that I see is them saying that it needs to be amended. I want that bill destroyed. I don't want anything in that bill to become law. Yet the Conservatives are more concerned about amending it than getting it completely removed, similar to what happened with Bill C-9. They weren't trying to get it removed entirely. They were trying to amend it. And that indicates that they are in favor for censorship. They are in favor of surveillance. They just want to sell you the idea that they're not as bad as the liberals. But I've spoken a lot about social media bans and how they represent digital IDs. This is exactly how they will usher digital IDs in Canada, at least federally by banning people, by having people prove their age in order to access social media. Yet Pierre Poilievre was in favor of having the conversation about banning social media for teens under the age of 16 when Wab Canoe announced that he was considering doing it in Manitoba. So they are in favor of censorship, digital IDs. So yeah, I agree. It's the illusion of choice. Um yeah, that's exactly one of the things I want to talk about on Thursday. PDS.010 is saying you're right, it's the flock cameras. Yeah. Yeah, they're using it in the US too. And basically, those cameras are feeding the information into the Palantir software that analyzes everything and present the information in a way that it makes sense to a user. So yeah, we're going to talk about this on Thursday. I need to do a lot more research on my side, but this is something that I've been following for years since I come from that world. But yeah, the flock cameras are all over the place in the US. Trevor Benson is saying so much information at our fingertips, and 90% of the population still has not figured out the fertilizer problem will touch each and everyone. Yeah, that's willful ignorance. People just don't want, you know, when you when you swallow the red pill, you become faced with the black pill pretty fast. And unfortunately, for the people that are black pilled, they normally tend to see the world in a very negative way, right? You got to be very, very careful with that black pill because it is one that is hard to forget. But it's willful ignorance. They're doing it on purpose. They just don't want to be bothered. They'd rather be entertained by watching hockey than realize what's actually going on in their own country. You know, I spoke about this when they had a massive protest in Toronto. I think there was the estimates were like 200,000 people showed up in Toronto for a protest for what was happening in Iran, and try to have this type of protest by Canadians to protest what the government is doing to us. The C2, C8, C9, C12, C16, C22, C25, soon a new C63, and social media bans. But you won't see Canadians, 200,000 Canadians protest in the street for what the government is doing to us right now. Yet Iran became Iran through what we're seeing right now by having a government push legislation that oppressed the citizens. We are in the midst of being under a tyrannical government, yet the people are protesting about something that's happening halfway across the world instead of protesting what's happening right here in Canada. It's too hard of a pill to swallow for most individuals. Stone's Corner is saying, just heard about flock cameras today. Are they in Canada? We'll need to find out more. I'm going to do all the research. As far as I understand, they are, but I need to prove it. I need to do the research. But on Thursday, I don't know if you were there earlier, but on Thursday, I will do a deep dive on the Palantir, the Cohere. Flock cameras are part of the research I want to make. I wonder, are you aware of this because you follow a guy by the name of Lenny Boy? I don't know if you guys know Lenny Boy on Instagram, but as much as there's a lot of things that he says I don't necessarily agree with him, he has to be my favorite content creator. Like the way he presents information is just is epic. I absolutely love his content. He was talking about the flock cameras today, and I think he was saying something like 200 or 300 100,000 of those cameras are currently installed in the US. So definitely we'll be talking about it a lot more on Thursday. Prairie is saying, look at the tech they're installing in the new vehicles. If you glance away, crazy. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about the new cameras that will be installed in all vehicles that will scan your eyes to see if you're too tired or you're upset, you're not in the proper mood to be driving. It will disable your car. So basically, they're saying that they want to be able to disable your car because they don't see you fit to be driving, whatever the hell that means, right? They tell you that it's to protect you, but every single time somebody or a government tells you that they want to do that for your own safety, they're taking your rights away. They're taking your freedoms away. That is always how it works. So yeah, Prairie, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's absolutely scary when you think about it, that all that technology that could simply just make our world better and easier for all of us is literally being used to spy on us, control us, and take our freedoms away. Has anyone heard anything on the Ireland protests? You mean updates? Because I haven't. I have not looked into it for about a week and a half. There's so much stuff going on here. I haven't seen it, but if somebody has an update, I'd be curious to know. PDS.010. They think they run the country. The people run the country will chase them out. Well, see, that's always something to think about, is they work for us, not the other way around. The people should never be scared of their government. The government should be scared of the people. One of my favorite picture is, looks like it's a painting, but it's probably just not a real painting. But the picture, my favorite picture, is a bunch of people. They look very poor, on their knees, holding a chessboard on their back, and you have a bunch of rich people sitting around the table playing chess on their back. And basically the point is that all they have to do for that board, for that chessboard to go flying, is to stand up, is for all of them to stand up together. So yeah, there's definitely, the power is in the people. We just give our power away in exchange for security. Instead of deciding that we will take care of ourselves, we will take care of our families, we will do what needs to be done, we will get the skills we need in order to become protectors and defenders, we give those rights away to our government. And guess what? Our government is always going to take advantage of that. They always want more. And this is exactly what we're seeing right now. Buy a small EMP. Oliver Ruff is saying buy a small EMP. Are you referring to an electronic magnetic pulse or electromagnetic pulse? My apologies. So that you can destroy everything that is electronic around you. I believe that that's what you're talking about. It could potentially be useful. I agree. You're just going to destroy pretty much, depending on the radius of your electromagnetic pulse, you'll destroy a lot of equipment. So you got to be careful because you'll destroy yours at the same time. Derek Seitler is saying mass general walkouts lock down the country. You know, I think it was Pat King that said when I was on his podcast that Canadians could shut down the economy by just staying home for a week. No working. Just nobody goes to work. Nobody works. We just let it be. See what happens. Same thing as don't file your taxes at the end of the year. You know, most Canadians are, I'm not saying you should do something illegal. I'm just saying it could be as simple as that. Because you could literally not file your taxes at the end of the year, the government already, for the average Canadian, they already pay taxes at the source, right? Their taxes are already collected. They're not independent workers or small businesses, or they don't own their own company. All you're going to do is they already know how much you made. They already know how much you owe them. They just want you to confirm it. So do they really need you? No. But if you don't send in, imagine that millions of people don't send in their paperwork. It's going to literally take Revenue Canada down. They're not going to be able to handle the amount of work or follow through or follow up they're going to need to do. Same thing with the census. As much as the census is mandatory to fill out as per the Statistic Act, there hasn't really been. I couldn't find one single case of somebody going to prison for not filing the census, which is no longer a sentence anymore. It's no longer consequences since, I believe, 2016. It's no longer a consequence. Going to jail is not something that could happen to you, but you could get a fine of $500. But I still couldn't find a name of somebody that actually paid $500 for not filling out the census. The filing rate is something like 98%. So most people do it. But imagine that you just stop. Again, I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying you could. Let's see. Yeah. See, that's another problem that we're seeing right now. You're absolutely right, Trevor. Once the data centers are up and running, they will have enough computing to run the robots. They won't need us anymore. And that's something Alberta is getting a lot of data center builds. And I don't know if you guys were there with the episode I did with Jason Levine last week. But again, I come from the telecommunication world, and one thing that Canadians need to be very worried about is that Canada has the perfect weather for, and when I say climate, I'm not talking about climate change. I'm just talking about the environment here, especially the temperatures. But Canada has the perfect climate for data centers because we are cold. Like the temperature is generally cold. And what do you think? Data centers have a bunch of servers. Servers create a lot of heat. Heat needs to be lowered in order for that equipment not to overheat. So the data center itself needs to be air conditioned. But in Canada, we got two things that most countries don't have is cheap energy. Think Quebec has something. I've said that Quebec had the largest hydroelectricity output in the world. It's correct. We are the fourth, so I was absolutely mistaken on this one. But we have one of the largest hydroelectricity infrastructure in the world, which means energy is cheap. And we have the third largest oil reserve in the world. So energy is cheap. So data centers are going to come to Canada more and more because of AI, because of, yes, to have the technology to run them robots. So we got to be very careful because our climate is perfect. Like I said that story last week, but super fast. I used to work for a company that purchased a couple data centers ran by another company called 4 Degrees. And the reason they were called 4 Degrees is that their main data centers was in Quebec City. And in Quebec City, the average temperature, if you look at the whole year, is 4 degrees. So 4 degrees, that's very low. That means that data centers in Canada not only get their energy cheap, but they are able to pull the air right out from outside. They don't need to cool it down because vast majority of the time, the air outside is cold. Another reason why building data centers in Canada makes a lot of sense, but that makes it extremely, extremely dangerous for us. PDS.010 saying Carney will push the digital ID here. They already are. The social media ban is all about digital IDs. They're already pushing it. Ontario's developing theirs. Quebec is developing their health digital IDs. So is Ontario. So is Alberta. It already exists. I believe in BC it already exists too. So they're already pushing it on the provincial level. But social media bans is how Carney is going to push the digital ID here. Let's see. Derek Seidler is saying Elon has shut off Starlink to punish governments before. I can't see him bending a knee to a proxy CCP government. We'll see. We'll have to wait and see. Starlink is definitely a good option. I used it for years. I used it when I lived in the woods. I would argue that my connection was a lot better in the woods using Starlink than it is right now in Montreal. So yeah, Starlink's a great service, and I used it all over the US when we were RVing. So yeah. Let me see. Let's see. Oh, never seen you before. Kat, have I seen? Oh, Kate Berkeley is saying liberals equal traitors. Carney and the Liberal Party are deliberately and systematically destroying Canada, following the orders of their masters, the WEF/WHO. Sounds scary, similar to Hitler and Stalin's regime. Get rid of certain class Christians in Canada. Get rid of the mentality challenged. Get rid of the old and infirm. Get rid of anyone speaking against the treasonous government who are breaking so many laws, using the media as their own personal propaganda machine, using the RCMP. Listen, I agree with 95% of your comment. The only part I really don't agree with is the first part. The liberal equals traitors. It's not the liberals, it's the government. The conservatives are no better. The conservatives are part of the same problem. They could have at least tried to trigger an election on November 7th with the liberal budget when the Bloc Québécois pushed some amendments that the NDP and the Green backed, which means if the Conservative would have backed it too, they would have triggered an election, but they chose not to do it. Although 7 or 10 days after, they acted like they were against the budget when they just voted in favor of it. So don't be fooled that this is not a left versus right problem. This is a government versus us problem. But all the rest of your comment, I agree. And I agree with you. And, you know, following the orders of their masters, the WEF and WHO, there's one part I disagree with you there, because Carney's masters are not the WEF and WHO. He was part of the WEF. Mark Carney was on the board of trustees. Mark Carney was on the board of trustees when the net zero, the 2050 net zero agenda was presented to their members. So it is not his masters. He is the masters of the WEF. The WHO is just an equivalent, but he was also, remember, he was also the UN Special Envoy for Climate Change. So Mark Carney ain't Justin Trudeau. Mark Carney is somebody that has been part of the global agenda, the globalist agenda, the New World Order for a very, very long time. And their masters, we don't really know who those masters are. We can argue, but the real people behind them, we probably can't confirm their names, but we all have an idea of who they are. But I agree your message. We are headed towards a Hitler and Stalin regime. This is exactly how they would do it. I completely agree with you. Doso, say what's going on, brother? Nico's still killing out there. Well, I do my best, brother. I definitely do my best. Nico Trevor is saying, Nico, you definitely never looked into echelon. What's echelon? I've heard that word many times before. You'll have to enlighten me onto what echelon. You're probably talking about a company, I would imagine. Or are you talking, oh, hold on, you're probably talking about this here. Echelon, the original secret government code name in a surveillance program, signal intelligence, SIGINT collection and analysis network, operated by the 5 signatory states to the UK-USA Security Agreement, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the UK, and the United States, also known as the Five Eyes. I've heard of the Five Eyes. I just never heard of it as echelon. Created in the late 1960s. Formally established, blah, blah. It had, yeah, by the end of the 20th century, it had greatly expanded. Yeah, it's probably all part of the NSA when it comes to the US, right? But how surprising. Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the UK, and the United States, all countries that are being targeted by surveillance and censorship. All countries that are, well, outside of the United States, they're not under the king, but they used to be. Very interesting. I definitely need to look into Five Eyes because I believe that that's what it's become. Because I've heard of Five Eyes before. So definitely something I need to add to my list. Oh shit. Just noticing we're 1 over. So we'll take it there. You know what? Let's take one last comment. Serena is saying, well, when you cannot think past the grocery store as the place that you get your food and fertilizers is something that farmers need to worry about. Critical thinking is not a thing with many. You're probably talking about Trevor's comment earlier. Yeah, well, that is a fact that not criminal, but critical thinking is definitely not common, just like common sense. Yeah, Carmela Wayne O'Leary wants to build one in Grand Prairie. Yeah, from the latest news that I've seen, he wants to build literally the biggest data center in Canada, and he thinks it's a good idea. And you know that it is for AI. If you're building a data center today, is because you expect AI companies to rent the space and give you nice monthly payments for it. On that note, guys, we will call it a day. It is 2 over. I appreciate every single comment. I appreciate you guys being here today. It's always a pleasure to have conversations with you guys, but you guys need to call. We have the device waiting to hear your voice. I understand that most of you don't want to talk on the phone, but it's always good to have voice-to-voice conversation. There's something way better about voice-to-voice than me just reading your comments. On that note, guys, as bad as it seems, it's not too late for Canada, but it is up to us, the people, who see what's going on, to wake up others, to have the hard conversations, to show them what's really going on. And this starts with your circle of influence, your family, your friends, your co-workers. You need to be ready to have those hard conversations and tell them about what's really going on. And this is how we change Canada, one conversation at a time. I will see you guys tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, enjoy the rest of your night and peace.